Fire. Elemental representation of rage, destruction, rage, passion, rage, love, and especially rage. All of these feelings you must understand to kill this boss. In fact, you'll love to nerd rage while progressing on this boss, and there is a good chance of passionately destroying a few hit sets. Sounds like fun. Let's get started. Ragnaros is a 3-phase fight with 2 transition phases. The fight is all about execution and survival. Ragnaros has around 201 million HP, and throughout the fight, the raid will also need to kill Sons of Flame, Molten Elementals, and Lava Scions. These have 830,000, 250,000, and 6.2 million health respectively. You'll want to bring 2 tanks, 4 to 6 healers, and a balanced DPS makeup. Let's get into the abilities. Ragnaros has multiple abilities during Phase 1. His melee attacks can open a burning wound on his primary target. This stacking fire debuff ticks for moderate damage. His signature attack throughout the phase and the rest of the fight is Sulphurous Smash. Ragnaros will raise his hammer and after a brief pause slam it into the platform. The initial impact will kill all players it hits, and 3 lava waves will move out from the outsides of the smash. Players hit by the wave will be knocked back, take high fire damage, and gain a mild fire dot. This dot is dispellable. During Phase 1, Ragnaros will cast Hand of Ragnaros and Wrath of Ragnaros. Wrath hits 3 random players for moderate fire damage and all surrounding players with splash damage. Hand of Ragnaros knocks back all players in melee range of the boss and deals mild fire damage to them. It will also interrupt all spell casting. Throughout the phase, Ragnaros will shoot magma traps. These are launched at a random player and remain on the platform until triggered. Walking into a magma trap will trigger it and cause it to explode with its magma trap eruption ability. This deals high fire damage to all players and knocks the offending player into the air. If at any point no players are in melee range of the boss, he will spam Magma Blast, a high damage fire attack that increases fire damage taken. When Ragnaros reaches 70% health, the first transition phase will begin. The boss begins transition phases by casting Splitting Blow, slamming Sulphurous into the platform and spawning 8 Sons of Flame adds. He will then submerge into the platform and pelt the raid repeatedly with lava bolts, dealing moderate fire damage. Ragnaros will re-emerge once all Sons of Flame have been killed or after 45 seconds, whichever comes first. Sons of Flame adds will spawn with the Burning Speed buff, causing them to move faster at higher health. This debuff will fall when the ad reaches 50% health. Sons of Flame will naturally try to run toward the hammer, and if they reach it will unleash a supernova, dealing deadly fire damage to all players. Ragnaros will retain his Burning Wound, Sulphurous Smash, and Magma Blast abilities during Phase 2. In addition to this, he will gain Engulfing Flames. This spell randomly ignites 1/3 of the platform in fire for a short duration. Throughout Phase 2, Ragnaros will summon Molten Seeds. The seeds spawn at the location of 20 random players and deal moderate splash fire damage to all nearby players. 10 seconds after spawning, the seeds will explode in a Molten Inferno, dealing fire damage that decreases depending on the player's distance from the explosion. After the Inferno, each seed will spawn a Molten Elemental. These adds fixate a random player and make their way to melee them. At 40% health, Ragnaros will begin his second transition phase. The second transition phase is similar to the first, but 2 Lava Scions will spawn in addition to the 8 Sons of Flame. The Lava Scions will occasionally cast Blazing Heat on a random player. This debuff lasts only a few seconds, but ticks for mild fire damage and causes the player to leave a trail of fire behind them. Walking into the fire will deal moderate fire damage to any player, but will heal Sons of Flame and Lava Scion adds. After 45 seconds have passed, or after all Sons of Flame have been killed, Ragnaros will re-emerge and Phase 3 will begin. Ragnaros retains Burning Wound, Sulphurous Smash, Engulfing Flames, and Magma Blast in Phase 3. Lava Scions that are still alive will continue to cast Blazing Heat. Throughout this phase, the boss will spawn Living Meteors. These adds will spawn above a random player and fall to the floor before fixating another random player. Players who come into contact with a Living Meteor ad will be killed with this Meteor impact. This will also kill all nearby players. Meteors cannot be killed because of the significantly reduced damage they take, but can be knocked back because of their combustible debuff. After a meteor has been knocked back, it will fixate a new player. When Ragnaros reaches 10%, he will run away and loot will appear. Let's go over the strategy. We'll start with phase 1 positioning. Place the melee on the left side of the room and the tanks on the far right side. Tank healers and half of the range DPS spread out on the right side, while raid healers and the rest of the range DPS spread out on the left side. Players will constantly be knocked around and forced to move due to lava waves and magma traps. Always remember to spread back out when too close to other players. Staying stacked up can be very dangerous to this phase. Melee and tanks are the exception and can stack in their areas since Ragnaros cannot target them with his Wrath spell. Throughout phase 1 and the rest of the fight, tanks will need to taunt off of each other because of their burning wound debuff. Your raid will need to assign one player to trigger magma traps. Since this player will routinely be launched into the air by the trap, they will need to have a way of avoiding fall damage or avoid being launched altogether. Here you can see I'm popping traps and using Levitate to avoid the fall damage. Mage Blink, Warlock Port, and other abilities can also work. Traps should be popped fairly soon after they spawn. This allows more room to spread out. It is best to give a short countdown before popping traps so players can prepare by using individual damage reduction cooldowns. Continue this until the boss reaches 70% and prepare for the first transition phase. At the start of each transition phase, Ragnaros will cast Splitting Blow, smashing his hammer into the platform and spawning 8 Sons of Flame adds. These adds will spawn in predetermined locations and attempt to move to the hammer. Start by assigning at least one stun or snare to each add. Until the adds reach 50%, they will move faster than normal, so it's important to stun, snare, and knock back adds. Though the adds have predetermined spawns, they will not always spawn evenly on both sides of the room. The raid will need to split DPS properly to handle adds on both sides. Begin by making a basic 50-50 split. This will be enough to handle adds most of the time. If the split is not so even, choose around 4 DPS for a swing team. This team helps on the side with the most adds when the split is not so even. Ragnaros will re-emerge after 45 seconds or once all of the adds have been killed, whichever comes first. Begin phase 2 by spreading out. Players should go roughly to their phase 1 positions but leave the center of the room open. The goal is to spawn the seeds around the outside of the room and leave the center open for stacking. Once seeds spawn, the raid should stack in the center of the room to prepare for the inferno. It is best to use a raid cooldown for each explosion to ease the amount of healing needed. After the initial explosion, the adds will make their way to the raid stack and must be AoE down. At this point, players may feel safe, but it is important to remain alert. Sulfurous Smash and Engulfing Flames can come while the raid is stacked up, and it's important to be prepared. The raid will need to see the phase a few times to get used to the timings, but the Smash and the Flames will often line up with the raid stacking up. In most situations, it will be safer for the raid to move the stack into melee range to avoid these abilities. The only difference will be when Engulfing Flames is in melee range as well. After the adds have all been killed, the raid will spread to their beginning positions and prepare for the next set of seeds. Repeat this pattern until the boss reaches 40% health and the next transition phase will begin. Handle the second transition phase just like the first. Split the raid up and stun, snare, knockback, and DPS down Sons of Flame quickly. During this second transition, tanks will need to pick up 2 Lava Scion adds that spawn. These will occasionally cast Blazing Heat on a random player and cause them to leave a trail of fire behind them. Because this fire heals all adds that touch it, it is important that during the approximate 3-second grace period, this player runs to the front of the room. This will put the fire out of the path of most adds and make it harmless. Just as in the first transition, this phase will end after 45 seconds or after all adds have been killed. Begin phase 3 by defeating any Lava Scions that are still alive. This should not take long at all, and once they are dead, positioning is very simple. Have players go to their phase 1 sides, but this time stack up instead. Players who are on the right side will stack just out of melee range on the right side, while players who are on the left will stack on that side just out of melee range. Melee and tanks will obviously remain in melee range. Throughout this phase, Ragnaros will call down meteors that fixate random players and roll toward them. These meteors cannot be killed, but knocking them back with any ability will cause them to fixate another player. Groups are positioned on the far sides of the room in order to leave the center open as much as possible. This is where meteors will cross between groups as they fixate players on opposing ends of the platform. Whenever a meteor comes too close to one side, a player will hit it with any ranged ability to punt it away. The idea is that the meteor will most likely choose a player on the other side of the platform and roll harmlessly through the middle to them. This allows the raid to remain stationary and DPS the boss. Keep this up until Ragnaros reaches 10% health and a chest containing loot will appear. Take this encounter one phase at a time. Do not try to learn the whole fight at one time and be ready to take it slow. Each phase is a new hurdle, but reaching them is a new benchmark. Measure your progress by phases, but don't get burned out trying to beat down the boss too quickly. If you found this guide helpful or enjoyable, please bookmark us at LearntoRaid.com, subscribe to us on YouTube, Justin TV, and Blip TV, and follow us on Twitter. Good luck, and we'll see you at the next boss.
I wasn't feeling so good. I just didn't feel like playing anymore. So I went home, and I got all comfy and cozy and all scrunched up in front of my phonograph. And I sat there